Last time, you saw how my quiet life turned into a battlefield the moment Karen HOA president in her shocking pink blazer set her sights on me. First, it was letters, then fines, then the mailbox smashed to pieces. Every step she pushed harder, trying to break me down, but I didn't back off. And while some neighbors whispered support, others clung to her rules like gospel. By the time the HOA meeting ended, the neighborhood was split in two. Lines were drawn, loyalties tested. And that was just the beginning. You don't spend years as a firefighter without learning to recognize patterns. A kitchen blaze starts small, smoke curling in the corners, and then it spreads. A wall goes, then the ceiling, then the whole house is an inferno. That's exactly how Karen played the game. The night after the HOA meeting, she retaliated again with the mail. Fines didn't just come once a week anymore, they came every day. Some of them ridiculous, laughable. Failure to maintain uniform lawn appearance, obstruction of sightline aesthetics. One even claimed my mailbox flag was unauthorized. Each fine stacked on top of the last. A mountain of debt that no one with a pension could hope to climb. But it wasn't about the money. It was about breaking me, turning the weight of numbers into chains, but I'd carried people out of burning houses before. Paper wasn't going to crush me. Then came the noise. At first, I thought it was coincidence. A car alarm blaring at 2 in the morning. Music thumping from across the street until dawn. Dogs barking nonstop just as I tried to sleep, but patterns don't lie. It wasn't random. Neighbors who used to nod my way now set their sprinklers to spray toward my driveway. Kids scrawled chalk arrows pointing at my house with the word violator. Scribbled beside them, Karen didn't need to loosen panel bolts herself anymore. She had the neighborhood doing her dirty work. One night, it went further. I was inside writing in my notebook when I heard a sharp clang on the roof. I rushed outside and caught the faint shadow of someone running off down the street. A brick lay cracked against the shingles, right below the panels. That wasn't noise. That wasn't intimidation. That was an attack. I filed a report with the police, but they shrugged. No cameras, no witnesses, nothing we can do. I knew better. Karen didn't leave fingerprints. She left pressure. Enough of it, and people cracked. The real breaking point came with Lawson. He'd stood up to her once. He'd pushed back. But one evening I saw him standing in his driveway, tearing down a brand new rain barrel he'd barely installed. His face was pale, his hands shaking. I walked over. "Lawson, what happened?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They threatened my wife's job, said they'd report us for some kind of permit violation." He swallowed hard. "I can't risk it. Daniel, I'm sorry." And just like that, another ally fell, but I didn't blame him. Fear is powerful. Fear keeps people in burning buildings when they should be running. It makes them freeze up when seconds mean life or death. The difference was I'd spent my life running into fire. Fear never stopped me before. It wasn't going to now. I knew I needed leverage. Documentation wasn't enough. Paper trails only mattered in court, and Karen controlled the board long before it ever reached a judge. What I needed was proof of her methods, something undeniable, so I started watching, every night. After the lights in the neighborhood went out, I sat near the window, notebook ready. Camera phone charged, waiting. For days, nothing happened. Just silence, crickets, the hum of the panels feeding power into my home, and then, on the 7th night, I saw her car. She wasn't in her pink blazer or polished shoes. She wore dark clothes, a cap pulled low, moving quick and quiet. She stopped. At Lawson's property first, tugged at the remains of his barrel, and then slipped toward my yard. My pulse hammered, but my hands stayed steady as I lifted the phone. The camera caught her shape in the glow of the streetlight. Caught the way she bent over my fence, clipboard still tucked under her arm even now, like she couldn't breathe without it. She fiddled with the gutter line feeding into the tanks. Twisting at the joints, sabotage. I hit record. The video wasn't perfect. Shadows, grain, distance. But it was enough. Enough to show Karen, HOA president, trespassing at night with her hands on property that didn't belong to her. The next morning, I printed still frames, tucked copies into envelopes, and slipped them under doors up and down the block by noon. The neighborhood was buzzing. Some called it fake. Some whispered about legal battles. But others saw her for what she was, not a leader, not a guardian of community standards. A saboteur, a bully, and once you see a mask crack, you can't unsee it. Karen didn't confront me right away. She let the whispers simmer, the tension build. But when she did show up, it wasn't with a smile. She marched right up my driveway. Face hard, sunglasses gone, icy blue eyes sharp as blades. "You think you're clever," she said. "No fake sweetness this time, no performance. Just venom." I met her stare. "I think sunlight and rain don't answer to you." Her lips thinned. For the first time since this war began, I saw something raw flicker across her face. Not anger. Not control fear. She turned without another word, heels snapping against the concrete, but I knew this wasn't over. If anything, I'd just pushed her into a corner. And a cornered animal doesn't back down. It bites. That night, I sat with the monitor glowing, panels feeding power into my home, tanks full from the last rain. The fight wasn't about rules anymore. It wasn't about panels or tanks or guidelines. It was about survival, and if Karen wanted a war, she was about to get one. If you've ever fought a fire, you know there's a moment where smoke turns black. That's the sign. That's when the oxygen's being eaten alive. When the blaze shifts from manageable to deadly, that's where this battle had reached. Karen didn't crumble. When I caught her on camera, she adapted. Within days, she'd filed an injunction against me. Pages of legalese, stamped and sealed, delivered by a courier who looked almost apologetic as he handed it over. The claim: endangerment of property values, community destabilization, non-compliance with collective standards. I'd half expected her to swing that hammer, but seeing it in print still hit me like a backdraft. Court wasn't just expensive. It was time, energy, stress, and that's exactly what she wanted to bleed me dry, without ever striking a physical blow. But Karen didn't stop there. The HOA newsletters went out with my name printed in bold ink. Ongoing violation case. It read like I was some criminal under investigation. Neighbors who'd nodded at me last week now pulled their curtains when I walked past. A couple of kids riding bikes muttered outlaw under their breath as they sped away. Karen didn't need truth. She needed narrative. And she was damn good at spinning it. Then came the property inspection notices, 3 in 1 week. Each one more invasive than the last. Gutter maintenance check. Fence line measurement. Structural compliance review. I knew the game. They weren't checking for safety. They were fishing, hoping to find some technicality they could weaponize. The inspectors moved through my yard like detectives at a crime scene. Cameras clicking, measuring tape stretching across flower beds. I watched from the porch, arms folded, jaw tight. One of them, young guy, maybe mid-20s, paused and muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Man, they're really gunning for you." I didn't respond. I just wrote it down in my notebook. Another log for the fire. Meanwhile, Lawson avoided me. I could see him watering his lawn across the street, head down, shoulders hunched. Fear had wrapped him up tight, and I didn't blame him. But it stung all the same. It wasn't just about me anymore. This was about what Karen was teaching the neighborhood, that standing up meant suffering. That silence was survival. I'd seen the same thing in burning buildings. People trapped, frozen, too scared to move until it was too late. And I'd drag them out one by one, even when the heat scorched through my gear. I wasn't about to let fear turn this street into ashes. Then Karen escalated again. A certified letter arrived, heavy with signatures. The HOA board had voted to place a lien on my home. If the fines weren't paid, if the panels and tanks weren't removed, the HOA reserved the right to seize property through foreclosure. That was the nuke. The doomsday weapon. She wasn't just trying to intimidate me anymore. She was trying to erase me. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, light from the monitor painting the walls blue. Every hum of the panels felt louder, every creak of the house sharper. I thought about the years I'd spent in this home, the sweat I'd poured into it, the lives I'd lived inside these walls, and I thought about losing it all to a woman with a clipboard and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Anger simmered, hot and steady, not reckless, not wild, Controlled, like the kind of fire you set on purpose to stop a larger one from consuming the forest. Karen wanted escalation. She'd just lit the fuse the next day. I went on the offensive. I printed every document. Every letter, every photo, every video still frame. I bundled it all into neat stacks and mailed it not to the AO, not to Caren, but to the county commissioner, the state attorney general's office, and a local journalist I'd once pulled out of a wrecked car years ago. I knew Karen's power was built on shadows and whispers. Drag her into the light and suddenly the game changes. A week later, the first article hit the local paper. Homeowner battles HOA over solar panels. It wasn't front-page news, but it spread like kindling in dry brush. The article painted me as stubborn, yes, but principled. A man standing for independence. A veteran of the firehouse, fighting not flames this time, but bureaucracy. Neighbors who'd turned away started whispering again, but different whispers now. Some nodded when I passed. A few even muttered, "Good luck." Caren hated it. I could see it in the way she drove past my house slower than usual, jaw clenched, sunglasses hiding eyes that couldn't mask her fury, but victory wasn't mine. Yet, because Caren still held the legal hammer, and she swung it hard, court summons arrived. Dates locked in. Lawyers lined up like soldiers. The battlefield was shifting from streets and clubhouses to courtrooms and judges' chambers, and if there's one thing I knew, it's that fire doesn't care where it burns. It'll consume the forest, the house, the courthouse itself if you don't control it. I wasn't fighting just for panels anymore. I was fighting for survival. And Caren, she wasn't done escalating. Not by a long shot. That night I stood on the porch, air heavy, cicadas buzzing. In the dark, I looked at the panels, at the tanks, at the house I'd built with sweat and stubbornness. Then I looked down the street, where porch lights flickered on one by one. My neighbors' homes, families inside. People too scared to speak. This wasn't just my fire anymore. It was theirs too. The question was, would they stand with me when the flames rose higher? Or would they let Caren burn me out alone? Either way, I wasn't backing down, because escalation only goes one direction. And if, she thought I was the type of man who'd fold under heat, she hadn't been paying attention. Courtrooms don't burn with flames. They burn with silence. The kind that presses down on your chest until you can barely breathe. That's where I found myself on a Monday morning, sitting at a polished oak table with my papers stacked like fire breaks. Across from me, Caren sat tall, blazer sharp, lips curled into that same thin smile I'd come to hate. Her lawyer-slick suit, slick hair, slick words shuffled his notes like he was already planning my funeral. The judge entered. Gavel struck. The fire was lit. Karen's lawyer wasted no time. He painted me as reckless, selfish, a man whose unsanctioned modifications threatened the collective harmony of the community. He spoke in circles, every phrase dripping with legal varnish, property value destabilization, unauthorized infrastructure, non-compliance with codified aesthetic statutes, big words, heavy words. But words can't change the truth. When it was my turn, I stood slow, steady, no theatrics. Just the facts. My name is Daniel. I spent 30 years running into burning buildings while everyone else was running out. I didn't fight to save strangers just to come home and be told I can't save myself with a few panels on my roof. I saw the judge's eyes lift, just slightly. A flicker. That's all I needed, but Caren wasn't rattled when she took the stand. Her voice dripped sugar and poison in equal measure. "We value Daniel as a neighbor," she began, her smile wide enough to blind. "But his actions disregard our shared standards. The neighborhood must present unity. His panels are disruptive, his tanks are unsightly. If we allow this, we invite chaos." Chaos, I almost laughed. Chaos wasn't solar panels. Chaos was fire tearing through a 2-story home while kids screamed inside. Chaos was an oxygen tank exploding when the roof gave way. But Caren didn't know chaos. She knew control. And she was trying to dress it up as order. The first round ended without resolution. Motions filed. Deadline set. Court calendars marked. Caren strutted out of the room like she'd already won. I walked out steady, calm, every step measured. Because I knew this was a marathon, not a sprint, and I knew how to endure fire. The weeks that followed turned into drills. Hearings, depositions, each one like walking into smoke so thick it stung my eyes. Lawyers circling, papers piling. Money. Draining, but I didn't crack. I documented. I logged, I stacked evidence like sandbags against a flood, and then the tide shifted. The journalist who'd covered me before showed up in the courtroom one day, notepad in hand. The next morning, an article hit the front page. HOA seeks foreclosure over solar panels. This time, people paid attention. Phone calls started coming in, reporters asking questions, strangers sending letters of support. Even a state representative issued a statement. Homeowners should not face foreclosure for embracing renewable energy. Karen hated it. I knew because her smile grew tighter, her words sharper. She filed new motions, desperate to choke the narrative before it spread. But the fire was out of her control. Now then came the cross-examination. Karen sat on the stand, perfect posture, voice sweet as syrup. But when my attorney asked her simple questions, cracks formed. Is there a state law banning solar panels? No. Is there a county ordinance banning rainwater tanks? No. Can you provide evidence that Daniel's property has decreased the value of adjacent homes? Silence. Then a week. It's about perception. Perception. The courtroom stirred. Even the judge leaned back, unimpressed. I didn't smile, not outwardly. But inside, I felt the ember glowing. Still, Karen didn't give up. She pivoted. Tried painting me as dangerous. Claimed I was confrontational, that I'd intimidated neighbors, that my obsessive documentation was harassment. She even brought Lawson into it. Summoned him as a witness. I'll never forget the look on his face when he walked in, shoulders hunched, eyes darting like a man dragged into a fire he wanted no part of. He sat down, hands shaking. And Karen's lawyer began. Mr. Lawson, would you say you feel uncomfortable living near Daniel? Lawson swallowed hard. Looked at me. Looked at Karen, looked at the judge, then he said, quiet but clear, no, Daniel's the only one around here who's ever had my back. The courtroom shifted. Karen stiffened. Her smile froze. For the first time I saw fear in her eyes. The hearing ended with no final judgment, more dates set. More filings ordered, but momentum had shifted. The fire was spreading her way. Now outside, reporters gathered. Cameras flashing, microphones raised. I didn't give speeches. I just said one thing. All I've done is power my home with sunlight and save rainwater for storms. If that's a crime, then maybe the rules are the problem. The clip ran on the evening news. Neighbors saw it, friends saw it, strangers saw it, and suddenly I wasn't just one man against Karen. I was a symbol. That night, I sat on my porch, the panels humming overhead. I thought about every battle I'd fought in smoke and heat. Every time I'd stood with flames on one side and life on the other. This was no different. The fire was in the courtroom instead of a house. The enemy wore a blazer instead of a burning ceiling, but the principle was the same. You don't back down. You hold the line, because if you don't, the whole block burns. Karen thought she could control the fire, but fires have a way of slipping past the lines. And in that moment, watching the streetlights flicker, I knew she was the one about to get burned. The courtroom fire didn't end things. If anything, it only poured gasoline on the coals. Karen lost her calm mask after that day. I could see it in the way she walked the block faster, sharper, like every step was a stomp meant to keep control. Her smile was gone, replaced by something brittle. She'd been challenged, and she didn't like it. Not one bit. The letters started piling faster. Thick envelopes, certified mail, warnings, fines, demands. The numbers grew absurd. Thousands, tens of thousands. A wall of debt she thought would crush me flat, but I didn't flinch. I stacked them on my desk, documented each one, logged every date, every signature. The pile grew high, but so did my patience, because I knew paper can't burn a man who's already walked through fire. The neighbors weren't so steady. Some started avoiding me altogether. Heads turned, doors closed, but others started asking questions. Quiet ones whispered across hedges. Daniel, is it true they're trying to take your house? Are they really charging you hundreds a day? Is it legal? I answered calm, simple, yes, yes. Maybe not for long, and that was when I saw it. Doubt, not in me. In her, Karen's grip on the neighborhood was slipping. She didn't like that one night. I came home to find spray paint across my garage door. Big red letters, selfish. I stood there a long time, staring, not at the word, at the desperation behind it, because vandalism wasn't power. It was fear. I scrubbed it off the next morning. Neighbors watched from their lawns, pretending they weren't. Karen drove by slow, her eyes cutting into me from behind her tinted glass. She didn't stop. She didn't have to. I knew it was her hand guiding whoever held the can. But the worst came a week later. It was early evening, the sun low, panels catching fire-orange light. I was inside fixing dinner when I heard it, metal clanging, a thud. Voices hushed but urgent. I stepped out the back door and froze. 2 teenagers, local kids, scrambling off my roof. One slipped, almost fell, caught himself, then bolted. They vanished over the fence before I could shout. I looked up. One of my solar mounts was bent. Bolts loosened, wires yanked. Sabotage if they'd done more, if they'd cut through the wrong line. They could have started an electrical fire. That was the breaking point. I called the police, filed the report, took photos, documented every mark, every footprint. When the officer left, I sat on the porch, fists tight, heart heavy, not because I was scared, because I was angry. Karen wanted me isolated. She wanted me pressured. She wanted me broken. And now she dragged kids into it. The next HOA meeting was fire. I walked into the clubhouse and the air was smoke thick with whispers. Karen sat at the front, gavel in hand, smile sharpened back into place. Order, she said. We have serious violations to address tonight. I didn't wait. I stood. My voice cut through the room. Someone sent children onto my roof to sabotage my panels. That isn't a violation. That's a crime. And if this board won't condemn it, then you're part of it. The room erupted. Voices rose, neighbors shouting over one another. Some denied it. Some defended her. Some stayed silent, but just a few spoke up. He's right. This has gone too far. You can't endanger kids just to prove a point. Karen banged the gavel hard, shouting for order. But the smoke was out. The fire was spreading, and she knew it. That night, Lawson showed up at my porch. Hands stuffed in his pockets, voice low. Daniel, he said, I'm sorry. I think Karen's losing it. She's not stopping. I nodded. I know, he looked down. She asked me to vote against you, to back her on the next round of fines, and, he swallowed hard, I told her no. That surprised me. Lawson wasn't built for standing up to her. But maybe even weak men reach a point where they won't bend further. I sat long after he left, staring at the street. The fight wasn't about panels anymore. It wasn't about tanks or rules or guidelines. It was about control. Hers, mine, and weed. Both reached the breaking point. She wouldn't back down. I couldn't back down. Something had to give, and I knew, deep down, the fire was about to jump lines, because in every blaze, there's a moment where the structure either collapses or holds. And my neighborhood was right there on the edge, ready to fall. I'd seen fires burn wild before on the job. You learn to spot the signs. The wind shifts, the crackle sharpens, the smoke gets darker. You can feel when a building's about to give. That's what the neighborhood felt like after the sabotage. A structure straining, groaning, ready to split. Karen doubled down. More letters. More fines. She even called in a lawyer, one of those sharp-suited types who smiles like he already owns your house. He came knocking on my door, papers in hand, talking about liens, foreclosure, asset seizure. I let him talk. I didn't say a word. When he was done, I pointed to the cameras on my eaves. Then to the stack of files on my desk, every letter, every photo, every report. This isn't just about me, I said. It's about her. And if you want to go to court, I'll drag every dirty trick she's pulled right in with us. His smile cracked. Just a hair, enough, but Karen didn't back down. She started calling emergency board meetings 2, 3 a week, dragging people in, forcing votes, rewriting rules mid-sentence. The clubhouse lights burned late into the night. Neighbors went in tired and came out more tired. And I saw it in their faces. Cracks, fatigue, her control was slipping. The turning point came at the potluck. Every summer, the HOA threw a neighborhood cookout. Big tables, paper plates, burgers, kids running wild. For years, it was tradition. For years, Karen ran it like a stage show, perfect, polished, her name stamped across every detail. But that year, nobody came. I walked past the clubhouse that Saturday, long folding tables stood half empty, food untouched. Karen sat alone at the head table, jaw tight, hands folded, trying to pretend it wasn't happening. The silence around her was louder than any protest, and then the petitions. Started Lawson was first, I'll give him that. Quiet guy, always sweating. Under pressure, but this time he surprised me. He went door to door, clipboard in hand, asking for signatures to remove her from the board. Others joined. One by one, people I never thought would cross her started signing. They weren't loud about it. They didn't shout. They didn't fight. They just stopped believing in her and belief is what held her power up. That's when she lost control. I'll never forget the night. Special meeting. Clubhouse packed, standing room only. Karen at the front, gavel in hand, papers spread wide. She started strong, rattling off rules, violations, my name in every other sentence. But the voices rose against her, neighbors speaking up. Enough. This isn't about the rules anymore. You've gone too far, Karen. She banged the gavel, shouting over them, but the words didn't carry like they used to. Then Lawson stood. Shaky voice, but steady enough. I moved to remove Karen as president. Silence fell like a dropped stone and then seconded. Voted hands raised across the room. Not all, but enough. More than enough. Karen's face didn't move at first, frozen. Then it cracked eyes wide. Lips trembling, fury pouring through. You can't do this, she snapped. I built this neighborhood. I kept it clean, I kept it safe, but the voices cut her down. Not with shouts, with silence. And that was the moment. The fire she thought she controlled turned back on her. She stormed out. Papers scattering, door slamming hard enough to rattle the glass. And just like that, the spell broke, the fines stopped coming. The threats ended. Neighbors started looking me in the eye again. A few even apologized. Some didn't, but that didn't matter. What mattered was this. The board was hers no longer. The neighborhood was free, but Karen wasn't gone. I saw her car cruise past my house at night, headlights off, moving slow. I saw her shadow at the end of the street. She wasn't president anymore, but she wasn't finished, and I knew. As sure as I'd ever known, anything fires don't just die on their own. Someone has to put them out. The night after Karen was voted out, the air felt different. Not lighter. Not free, quieter, like the pause after a storm. When the wreckage still lies all around you, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the street. The solar panels above me hummed soft, steady, alive. They'd survived. I'd survived. But I knew it wasn't over, because people like Karen don't just vanish, they smolder, for weeks. She lingered at the edges, her car rolling past slow, headlights off. Flyers slipped under doors, handwritten rants about decay. Lawlessness, how the neighborhood was falling apart without her. Some ignored it. Some didn't. A few even whispered maybe she had a point. That's the thing about fire. Even after you put it out, embers stay. Waiting for a spark, one evening I found my mailbox smashed in. Bent metal, shattered wood. On the ground, stuffed into the wreck, was the last letter she'd ever send me, scrawled in thick black ink. You think you've won. But I built this place. Without me, it burns no signature. Didn't need one. I stood there for a long time, letter in hand. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I just felt tired. Tired the way you feel after a long call when the smoke clears and the ash sticks to your skin. Then came the blackout. Storm rolled in heavy wind, lightning, the works. Power lines snapped across the county. Whole neighborhoods went dark, except mine, because my panels held. My batteries kicked in. My lights stayed on that night as thunder cracked and rain hammered down. My living room glowed, warm, bright, alive, and one by one my neighbors came. Soaked, shivering, holding kids by the hand. They knocked, sheepish, asking if they could charge a phone, warm some food, just sit in the light a while, and I let them in. Every one of them, we filled the house laughter, stories, the smell of coffee brewing. Strangers a week ago. Now gathered close, I looked around and thought, this is what Karen never understood. Control doesn't hold people together. Power doesn't. Fear DOESN single quotes D.light does. When the storm passed and the power came back, folks drifted home. But something had shifted. The whispers stopped. The glares ended. And slowly, step by step, the walls Karen built cracked apart. Neighbors started talking again. Sharing tools, swapping stories. Planting gardens, panels, rain tanks. The neighborhood changed not all at once, not perfectly. But enough as for Karen. She moved out 3 months later, quiet, no farewell, no fanfare. Her house went up for sale. Blinds drawn, yard overgrown. Some said she left for Florida. Some said she had family up north. Me? I think she just couldn't stand a place she no longer owned. The last time I saw her was at the edge of town. Gas station parking lot. She was filling up, staring out across the highway like she was already gone. Our eyes met for a second. Just one dot, no words, no smirk. No gavel in hand, just a woman, small in the glow of the pumps, already fading into the dark, and me. I drove home. Pulled into my driveway. Looked up at the panels on my roof, still gleaming, still steady. The fight had cost me money, friends, sleep, but it gave me something too. Something I'd never let go. Freedom, the kind you can't find, can't threaten, can't take the kind that hums quietly on your rooftop, catching the sun, promising you tomorrow, because in the end this was never Karen's neighborhood, it was ours, and it always would be.